Welcome to the Defining Moments podcast. Today, we're joined by Matthew Miller, publisher of Koren, one of the world's leading Jewish publishing houses. After growing up in a non-observant household and running a British multinational corporation, Matthew made aliyah in 1999. He later acquired Koren Publishers and transformed it from a company publishing just a handful of titles into a publishing powerhouse, releasing new works every week. Under Matthew's leadership, Koren has become synonymous with intellectual rigor and beautiful design, bringing us game-changing works like the Koren Sacks Siddur and the groundbreaking Koren Talmud Bavli. Today, we'll get a behind-the-scenes look at Jewish book publishing. We'll hear about working with Rabbis Sacks and Steinsaltz, learn how Koren differs from ArtScroll, discover why aesthetics matter in prayer, and explore Matthew's remarkable journey from secular corporate executive to the publisher who has fundamentally changed how modern Orthodox and religious Zionist communities learn and pray. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Defining Moments podcast. I'm Rabbi David Fine, and we're here in the beautiful Dabru Studios in Modi'in. And I'm very honored to welcome today to the podcast Matthew Miller, who is the publisher of Koren Publishers. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you, Rabbi Fine.
It's really an honor to have you. I've wanted to have you here for a long time, but we saw each other at the convention of the Rabbinical Council of America last month. And on the plane over, I had just finished reading a book that Koren had published, Imata Koren Hamilim Ha'elu. I'm not sure that's the exact title. If you're reading these words, which are the last letters of the soldiers that died in this war. And I told some of my colleagues at that convention that was literally the most moving book I've ever read in my life. And when I saw you there and I had just finished that book, I finally asked you if you could be here. So thank you very much for being here. And we'll talk about that book as well as others. But before we start, I always like to just get a 60, 90-second rundown on, who you are, where you were born, what you've done up till now.
Okay. I was born in Brooklyn about 200 years ago. I lived in the New York area. Then I went to undergraduate in Pennsylvania, and then I did graduate work at Oxford. And then I came back to the States, worked in a family company. I actually ended up in 81. I was sent over to Europe to run a European subsidiary, which was supposed to be 6 months. It took 18 years.
Wow.
And life got in the way.
So you lived in Europe?
I lived in England. Yeah,
in England.
I lived in England, but was traveling every week in Europe.
Uh-huh.
And when the company was sold, I was very happily out of a job. And aliyah made perfect sense.
Uh-huh.
We'd been coming 2-3 times a year. England's relatively close. Many of our friends had made aliyah, so we joined them. And it was probably the best decision we've ever made.
So you came here without knowing what you were going to do?
I had started knowing we were coming. I had started a small press. I've always been a bookaholic.
Uh-huh.
I had started a small press called the Toby Press, where I set up external warehousing and freelance editorial, and so it was easily transferable. So I sort of knew what I was going to be doing.
And I would think, or I actually know that setting up a press takes a lot of expertise and a lot of knowledge. Meaning, to be a bookaholic is one thing, but you just sort of mentioned, I set up a press. I mean, it seems to me that takes a lot of know-how.
If I had a chimney, if I had a fireplace, which you don't need in Jerusalem, I would put in, fools rush in, whereas angels dare not tread. I'm living proof of that. And I learned by making pretty much every possible mistake.
And you published the Prime Ministers under Toby, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct, yeah. That was, Yehuda Avner couldn't find a publisher because nobody was interested. And I met Yehuda, the book was amazing. And we ended up working very closely on that and one or two other books that we did together before he passed away. And one of our most successful books ever.
And what year did you come here?
We arrived in July 99, 26 years ago.
So tell me about how you came to, purchase or acquire, whatever the right word is, Koren. I mean, you said you grew up in America. I don't know your exact background, but you're a bookaholic, but you didn't, you weren't a publisher, right?
No. I wasn't a publisher. I was working on industrial equipment throughout Europe and America, and I didn't grow up dati, Baal Teshuva, happily so. After about 3 or 4 years, I was very frustrated with it because when you're in trade publishing, every book is a new venture. Every book is a new marketing exercise. And, it's like if I said to you, who is J.K. Rowling's publisher, you'd go, I don't know.
Right.
Because the book is the hero, which is fine. But what happened was I probably published something in the order over a 5-year period, maybe 100 books, plus minus, I don't know. And of those books, 90 flopped, which is typical. And according to the authors, it was always my fault. 5 did okay, and 5 did brilliantly. And
this is with Toby?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And of those 5 or 10 books that did very well over the period, they also, most of them said, well, thank you very much. I just got an offer from Random House. I just got an offer from Macmillan. So, I was being, where I was having success, there was very little to build on.
Right.
When I came, when we made Aliyah, I discovered Koren, and it really pushed all my buttons. It was academic. The reputation of Koren as a work of editing and scholarship was phenomenal. The graphics, the design is Mr. Koren designed his own fonts, and it's Zionist. Prayer for the state and all the stuff. I mean, all my buttons were pushed, and I thought, now let me just rewind for a minute. I had gotten to know a little bit Rabbis Sacks in England. It's a small community, and basically everybody knows everybody. And I had heard that he was looking for a Jewish publisher as opposed to a trade publisher. He had done a number of books with trade, but he didn't have a Jewish publisher and he wanted to bring out his Siddur with English outside the UK. The UK Siddur was part of the United Synagogue family. So outside UK, he was looking for a publisher of Jewish note. And I thought, if I can buy Koren, which, the staff was 3 people, they were all near retirement. But if I buy Koren and get Rabbi Sacks, we can make a shidduch here. This makes sense. So after small negotiation, I acquired it. Spent 2 years cleaning up. Stuff had been done since 1970s on films, and they wanted to make a change. They had to take an X-Acto knife and cut out a letter and scotch tape a new letter, and it was really quite close to medieval. So we digitalized, we did all this work together, and then we brought out the Koren Sacks Siddur in 2009. It took us about 2 years, and it's been wonderfully successful.
Now, there was a Koren Siddur out earlier,
There was a Hebrew Koren Siddur, which is still out, and we did is we updated it. When I say updated, we didn't change anything. We retypeset it, we used better paper, we made it a little bit more legible, but it's still the same Koren Siddur in a new edition. What they had never done is they had never done a foreign language Siddur.
Right, a translation.
And then we can go horizontal or vertical, and that was pretty successful. And he said, Matthew, would you consider doing a machzor? And I said, I did the polite form of a duh. And we came out with a Rosh Hashanah machzor a few years later. And one of my close friends and sponsors said to me, he said, I've never had a Rosh Hashanah like this. I've never had, my tefillah has completely changed. 2 years later, we did the Yom Kippur and then the Shalosh. But what was very funny was Rabbi Sacks said to me, so how much commentary would you like? So I said, excuse me, Harav, how much commentary do you want to put in? They said, well, we do have bums on seats for 2 days. I think rather a lot. And
so you worked closely with two of the greatest luminaries of our generation, Rabbi Sacks and also Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz. So, I was going to talk about that later, but you mentioned Rabbi Sacks. What was it like, working with him? Tell us a good story.
I would not claim friendship with him. I had a very warm and excellent professional relationship with him. He was a wonderful, he was a Gaon. There's enough people out there telling how his philosophy and how wonderful he was. I knew him as a writer. And as a writer, he was probably one of the best I've ever worked with. If a writer comes in and says, look, this book is perfect, doesn't need editing, we're not going to do the book.
Right.
Rabbi Sacks loved the process. He loved the back and forth. And he would maybe accept 70, 80% of suggestions, which were normally just clean up things. He said, look, we're leaving this. He said, we would say, okay, fine, great, we're not changing it. But he loved the process. And that made it so pleasurable. And every time we'd have a meeting, a discussion about a point in the Siddur or the Tanakh or whatever the subject was at the time would turn into a shiur.
So you mentioned he was a great writer. What makes somebody a great writer from your perspective?
I confess I'm an Anglophile.
Ah.
I think the Brits beat the Yanks on writing. I mean, they invented the language and they're pretty good at it. And I just think his content, of course, was brilliant. But the way he expressed himself, it was a pleasure to read. You read Covenant Conversation every week.
Right.
Just to read it is an act of beauty.
Right.
It really is, because he didn't try to fill you up with every fact and everything he knew and every quotation. When I went to university, it was interesting. When I went to university in England, I did my first paper. And the professor said, no, stop. I was quoting this, quoting that. He said, no, stop. He said, don't tell me what other people are writing. Tell me what you think. And nobody had ever said that to me in 4 years of undergrad. He would express his thoughts magnificently and with eloquence. I remember I went to an OU dinner once in the Ramada in Jerusalem. And you know the dining room there, the hall, there must be 2,000-3,000 people. And for a Jewish event, he spoke on Shabbat without a microphone, of course. You could hear a pin drop. Have you ever been to a dinner with Jews where you could hear a pin drop?
No.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, they were just hanging on his every word.
I always say at my Chag HaSmicha in Efrat in 1997 or 98. So at Bravener's at Hamivtar. So this was the order of the speakers. I spoke on behalf of our Smicha class. So the order of speakers was Rabbi Chaim Bravender, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, David Fine. So I said, one of these things is not like
this is a hard act to follow.
One of these things is not like the other. But so again, we're skipping around a lot just because you mentioned it. But what the Talmud? Tell me about how that came about.
This goes back to my, fools rushing in where angels dare not tread. So we came out with the Siddur. We started to make a little bit of waves. We started Magid books as as opposed to Koren, which we reserve for Tanakh, Siddurim, texts, sacred texts. We started because Magid is a bit of let's call it a broad church within the Orthodox spectrum. There's different opinions.
Right.
So we wanted to keep the branding a little bit separate. I don't know if it works or not, but that's what we did. And then I got a meeting with, I took a meeting with Menyev in Yisrael. I don't know if you know him. Meni Steinsaltz, Menyev.
Right, I don't know him.
He's the head of the
son,
Steinsaltz.
right?
Yeah, he's the son of Rabbi Steinsaltz. And he said, look, we've been publishing the Talmud for 40 years. And we've been publishing badly. And they had this disastrous thing in the 1980s with Random House.
I still have those.
The big volumes.
Yeah, they were like in my bookshelf.
And if you look at those volumes, in 1989, they were $50 a volume, gold leaf. And if they had finished it, it would be 300 volumes. I mean, it wasn't designed. It was designed as a coffee table book.
Right.
It was not designed as a user
on someone's shelf.
Yeah, it was the conception wasn't the right conception. He said, look, we're looking for a partner publishing. And we said, you're doing some good stuff. So I said, okay. Anyway, within 2 weeks, we had a handshake and a deal.
Uh-huh.
And we agreed to be his publisher partner publisher in both Hebrew and English. He wanted us to do French as well, and I'm kicking myself now, but I couldn't undertake it at the time.
Right.
And then the partnership was such that when we did the Talmud over, they did the academic work and the translation.
Oh, they did the translation.
They did the translation. Steinsaltz, this is how we split it. They did the translation academic work. We did the layouts, typesetting, design, printing, sales, marketing. That's how we split the arrangement. And it worked, and we would send it back to them. And we got this thing out in 10 years.
Wow.
Now that sounds like a long time, but that's
anyone that knows anything about the Talmud, right?
That's supersonic.
Right. And you were like sort of a little bit ahead of the Daf Yomi cycle, correct?
Sometimes,
some of the time.
Sometimes by days. But we got it out, and it was, and what we did not compromise was, the quality of the translation and the layouts. I don't know if you've seen it, but
of course, yeah.
It works beautifully. Having the Daf Vilna with the completely minukad. You have the other side where you have 4-color illustrations and the realia and the repetition of the Vilna, not the repetition, the repetition of the text of the Talmud with the elucidated English. It's. I don't think any Talmud can give you such a clear picture of what's on the page.
And did you work with Rabbi Steinsaltz at all, or was it mainly with his son and his team? Was he pretty much out of it by then?
On the Talmud itself, we were doing our area, and they were doing their area. And I know that Rabbi Steinsaltz would look over the final product, but that was more on the Steinsaltz side. But I had many meetings with Rabbi Steinsaltz. He was funny.
He was a little sharp.
He was funny.
I remember once I was in his shul in the German colony or whatever that was, and I saw him there, and I was with my young son, who he must have been like 6 or 7 years old. So I went up to Rabbi Steinsaltz and I said, "Could you give him a bracha that he become a Talmid Chacham?" So with my 7-year-old son there, he says, "Why does he need a bracha? If he learns, he'll be a Talmid Chacham."
That sounds like. I could tell you some very funny stories.
So tell us one.
If you want to,
tell us one story.
Please feel free to edit this out.
Okay.
So one of my sons at that time, this is now, oh gosh, this must be, I don't know, 15 years ago, 18 years ago. So I came over to see Manny on some stuff, and I had just come back from a teacher's parent meeting at my one of my son's high schools. It was my son Yeshua, and who's now with me.
Right, who's with you. Right.
And I was burning because he went to a very good high school, Machon Lev. But at the time, and there was science and math, and his Bagriot were embarrassingly good, and it was all that kind of stuff. But I was used to an environment where you should read a book a month in school. And they were reading. And I thought, if you're a French speaker or a Russian speaker in English, you should also read a Hebrew book a month, and you should read an English, French, or book a month. There's no reason why they shouldn't. And they were kind of like, poo-pooing me and like, yeah, fine, sure, we'll do that. And I know they weren't. I was burning. So I get to reception. Manny's finishing up a meeting, and I say, I'll be with you in a minute. No problem. And then Rabbi Steinsaltz comes out, puffing his pipe, And I go, he says, how are you? I says, how am I? I'll tell you how I am. And I just, completely inappropriate. I told him what was bothering me, and huffing and puffing. So he starts laughing. What is so funny? He says, look, he says, what are Jews known for? In Europe, Jews are known for being good with money, good with languages. I remember my late mother-in-law spoke 8 languages and survived the Holocaust. But what were the Jews in antiquity known for? I'm going, they were known for agriculture. They were known for army. You see Jewish battalions down in Elephantine Island in the Nile. You see they were farmers and they were soldiers. And he says, look today, what is Israel known for? It's, the army is the greatest in the world per capita. Israeli architecture. I mean, you fly over Israel and you can see where the border is because it's green where there's Israel, and where there's Jordan or Egypt or Lebanon, it's sand. I mean, he said the Jews have come back to their land and they have become what they once were. He says, don't worry about the books. It'll be okay. Anyway, so that's
funny, but very wise story.
Yeah,
very wise, very wise.
Feel free to cut that out.
So I want to go back a little bit because, like you said about Rabbi Sacks being a great writer, I want to get a little bit of a look behind the scenes of what it means to be a publisher in today's Jewish world from you. So the first question I'll ask is that when you acquired Koren,
I was going to say, what did Joe Biden say after the raise? Don't. You're going to Jewish publishing. Don't.
Did you have a plan? And the reason why I asked that is because, I see, gave me this catalog and I'm very familiar with it. I live right around the corner from a little mini mall center in Buchman here, and we have Stamatsky's, and I go in there almost every second or third day, and I see everything that you publish. So the range of what you publish—
That doesn't cover most.
Right, I'm sure. But the range of what you publish is so wide. So is it sort of like, you know what you want to publish, then you go out and find the people, or you just sort of, if somebody brings you something and says, I think this would be good to publish, if you think it's, good enough quality and it fits sort of your hashkafa, you'll do it. How does it operate? What was your plan?
Okay. Sorry, I'm going to be a little bit long-winded.
Okay.
Okay, if I hold up a Tanakh Koren with Rabbi Sacks translation,
right,
okay, and I hold up a Magid book. Yeah, they both have pages, they both have hardcover, they're whatever. But they're not the same animal. A trade book, as I was saying before, an author comes to us, and we like it, we don't like it, it fits our hashkafa, it passes the editorial committee, we edit, we put a great cover on, we do the marketing, and it's done. It's a relatively, it's not a simple exercise, there's no such thing, but it's as you say, if it's our hashkafa, we'll publish it if it's well written. But you look at a Koren product, you look at a Koren, a Sefer Koren, I mean, whether it's the Tanakh or whether it's the Talmud, these are projects that take 10, 15 years.
Right.
The amount of thought that goes into it is incredible. The amount we had on our Tanakh, on the Talmud, we must have had 60, 70 people working on it together with the Steinsaltz people. On our Tanakh with Rabbi Sacks, where he translated the Torah section, we must have had 40, 50 people over a 7-year period. These are very, very huge and complex projects. So let me now answer you. When we're dealing with Magid, yes, we can take books that are offered to us that fit our hashkafa. When we have Koren, it's a much more determined direction that we want to take. Simply because the investment, you're talking millions upon millions of dollars, and you can't just take these decisions lightly,
right,
because you can't afford to not complete the project, and you can't afford to make the wrong decision. And then within the Koren world, a publisher takes a logical course. Like, it's logical to move from Talmud. Now we've done the Mishnayot with the Steinsaltz people, with our friends at Steinsaltz. We've done Mishnah Torah, and we're doing that now in English. It's coming out next year. These are processes that make logical sense. We can afford to take more of a flyer on Magid or Toby titles,
right.
But less so. Koren's quite a planned out project. And also, just to make it more complicated, we're now dealing with 3 language areas.
Right.
We're dealing with Hebrew, which is still our largest area. We're dealing with English, and we're dealing now with French, because we're publishing in French. So our Machzerim and our Siddurim in French are now coming out.
So just to piggyback on what you just said about the translations or the other languages, when do you decide when you think a book should be translated into English? And I specifically asked because the book I mentioned at the beginning, one of your employees that was selling books at the convention told me that the book about the soldier's last letters was going to be published into English. And I'm wondering more specifically if there's ever been a book which is about Israel and Israeli culture, has Israeli idioms in it that may not have worked so well in English.
Yeah, let me first say it's not so much translated into English, it's a two-way street. It's a two-way street. For example, we published Rav Sabato's works in English. We helped get Rabbi Sabato's name out there, and his Tiyum Kavanah, which we translated as Adjusting Sights wonderfully. It's a
Shimmy Bayer from
He's on the cover. He's on the cover. Right. I remember Tanny and Shimmy were dating at the time, and I said to Tanny, I said, you're going out with this guy, you put him on the tank. What happens if it doesn't work out? She said, no, it's okay, it's okay. So I knew it was funny. But it's a small world. So we've taken books from Hebrew into English. We've taken books from Hebrew into French. We've taken books from English. When we first started with Rabbi Sacks, he wasn't particularly bothered about publishing in Hebrew. It's like he was very conscious about speaking in Hebrew. Not that he couldn't speak Hebrew wonderfully, just that for Rabbi Sacks, language was like a violin. And he had exactly the right note. And his Hebrew was excellent, but it wasn't
perfect.
He wasn't comfortable speaking it, and he wanted to make sure that exactly the right sense.
Right.
Now, so that's one of the reasons. So he wasn't thinking about, and we kind of forced him. I said, look, we've got to publish it. Okay, fine. And we found a translator. Translation is an art, not a science. And we found a poet named Tzur Ehrlich, and he gets Rabbi Sacks. He's on the same wavelength. And everything that we do of Rabbi Sacks is translated by Tzur Ehrlich. Now, different people have different translation soulmates, if I could say. We found an excellent one for German, and we published the Siddur in German. We find the right translator for each one. So it's also it's also better to get a good literary translator whom you can correct if they make mistakes by editors, rather than getting an academic translation and try to make it sing. You can't make a leaden translation sing. So, but you can always correct a mistranslation. Right. And we go through many processes of editing.
I want to go back.
I didn't answer you. So that was the first part of your question.
Right.
The second part of your question was about some books are not matim.
No, I'm not saying, I'm asking, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Right.
I remember we did not publish this book once by a person who was talking about, she had published a book in English about going off about people who go datlash, who go...
off the derech.
Yeah, who become not religious. And so it would be, we should publish it in English. And in Hebrew, I said, I read it, I said, look, there's nothing about the army. You're talking about marrying out, but that, you have to really work in Israel to marry out. We have different issues we have to deal with here. And that's, it wasn't, so I guess that's an extreme example of not everything works in other languages. Right.
So you're obviously very passionate about what you do. It comes across very easily. So when you're thinking, when you acquired Koren, this is obviously a business, right? But it seems to be like a love for you. So how do you balance those two things? Meaning, obviously, a business needs to make money, but
don't talk to accountants. That's the first. Okay. I apologize to my financial colleagues. Let me answer you like this. Nachshon, Moshe says, go across the sea. And they go, hey, water's up to there. I'm not going across the Red Sea, the Reed Sea. And Nachshon goes up to his nose, and finally when he's like, that's when the sea parts.
Right.
I don't know how it worked out, but it worked out.
So it's faith.
I don't. I have absolutely no idea. It's like my father used to say, like the bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly because the wings are too small for the body mass.
Right.
I don't know.
But I'm not only talking about that. I'm talking about today, right? Meaning, let's say somebody brings you something that you really think would be great for the Jewish world to read and have in their libraries, but you're not sure that it makes the best business sense. How do you weigh those two conflicting values. And you didn't do this because you could have done a lot of other things. You obviously wanted to have an influence and effect on the Jewish world.
I don't know. I'm not trying to be cute or evasive. Right. Just kind of works out.
Right.
Just kind of works out. You have to have look. You can't be a fool. You have to have a base of books that sell.
Right.
Okay. And happily, whether it's Rabbi Sacks or Rabbi Steinsaltz or Yehuda Avner, their books sell really well.
Right.
I mean, Talmud is brilliant. Rabbi Sacks' stuff, our titles are perennial. Yehuda Avner, I mean, sold 100,000 copies. We made 2 movies out of it. I guess if you do, somebody once said it's like a financial statement is like a report card. Okay, it's not. You don't try to just do it for the financials. Look at a car maker like BMW. They're not trying to get a financial result. They're trying to make the best car. I don't have a BMW, by the way. I don't have one. I don't know. But they're trying to make the best possible car. And if you try to do the best possible work,
it'll just work out financially.
It'll somehow work out. It really will. You can either be the best or the cheapest. You can't be in the middle. You can't be the cheapest, but you really have to strive for whether it's the editing or the translation or the quality of the texts themselves or the production or the way you sell. You can only go for the best.
Right. So back to something that you had said before we started when we were getting ready here. You said that you come out with 10 new books a month. So I was thinking back to whenever I'm at one of your, whether it's Shavua Sefer or at the convention, one of the Koren tables, and see all the different books. And I always think back to Phil Knight. Phil Knight was the founder of Nike. And he writes in his book that him and his main partner, who I forget what his name is right now, they wanted to come out with at least one new product every day. Every single day, come out with one new product. Now, Nike, as you know, has many, many, thousands or probably tens of thousands of products. But I don't think it was so much like, oh, we need this new product. That too. But I think it was more about innovation. Like, let's always be innovating. So does that hit a note with you? I mean, what?
Again, let me divide it between the imprints. Right. Under Magid Toby, we probably take less than 10% of the books that are submitted to us.
Wow.
Okay. Even if the author says, "Look, we'll pay you to publish," we don't do vanity publishing.
Right.
Period. So out of those, so we're terribly select, and Reuven Ziegler, Rabbi Ziegler, is our editorial director, and he has a monthly meeting in Hebrew. He has a monthly meeting on English titles, where we have both the editorial staff and the sales and marketing staff of each language group together, because they may come up with a book that's great, but can't sell. They might come up with a book that could sell, but we're not going to do
because of the quality.
On the Magid side of things, we have a plethora. We have too much. We have too much. On the Koren side, I mean, again,
less because
we're doing
big projects.
3 or 4 or 5 books a month in Hebrew, 3 or 4 or 5 books a month in English, 2 or 3, 1 or 2 in French, a couple in Spanish. So I mean, we weren't seeking to do what you say Phil Knight said.
Right. It sort of happens.
We have too much.
Right.
If anything, we should really cut back.
Right.
But we're suckers for good stuff.
Now, you mentioned before you said our hashkafa, or maybe I asked you in a question. So what is your hashkafa, the Koren hashkafa? Is there such a thing?
Was it Rambam who said he only defined God negatively, in negative terms?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Look, I'll go back to Mr. Koren's value. I'll start with, let me start there.
Okay.
And then let me expand it a little bit.
Great.
I'd say there's 4 or 5 points. Number one, let me go back. Mr. Koren had extremely high academic editorial standards, crazy high. We're still crazy, like that, to that level.
Right. When did he pass away?
He started the company in 1962. He died, I think, around about 2000.
You met him?
I did not. I never met him. No, I dealt with his partner.
I see.
I dealt with his partner who was retiring. So, from an academic or scholarly point, it's top rank. From a design point of view, I've always been fascinated by design. He designed his own fonts. There's a separate font for Tanakh than there is for the Siddur, because Mr. Koren thought the Tanakh merits its own font. That's his thing.
Right. And this is in the 60s.
This is in the early 50s, 60s.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he was a Zionist. He got out of Germany in 1933. Good time to leave Germany. And he worked for the not the JNF. I can't remember which one, but he designed the
Jewish agency.
Thank you.
Right.
He worked for the Jewish. He designed the logo of the city of Jerusalem. So those three values we carry on. I would add two more. I would add one. I guess three more. God, it keeps going. Let's say from Rabbi Steinsaltz, we learned that getting textual mastery is terribly important, and let my people know, that's their slogan. And his elucidation of whether it's Tanakh or Talmud or Mishnah or Rambam text is brilliant. He I won't say simplifies, because that's not the right word, but he elucidates and clarifies. That's the word. He clarifies what's on the page of texts. So that's a value. Number 4. Number 5, Rabbi Sacks, if among everything else he was a moral philosopher. And if I learned anything from him, is that there's a standard of morality, not just, of course, believe, but there's a standard of morality has to be external to yourself. Subjective morality is not valid, because it's whatever you feel at the moment. And that concept of right or wrong, God-given right or wrong, we try to inject in what we do. And I would say the last one,
it's fine.
Point number 6 is building bridges. I mean, we're in a unique position. I don't think any other publisher, sacred or secular, frum or not frum, we are as at home in the Anglosphere and the Hebrew sphere. We, like I said, we brought Rabbi Sacks to Israel, and we brought Rabbi Sabato to the English-speaking world. We published Rabbi Sabato in French. We're doing it in French now, because that whole message of those first 5 points, I don't think exist outside our company. Wow. And we're trying to bring them in these different language areas, so it's terribly important.
That's a very comprehensive answer. Let me ask you a question just about something you just said about Rabbi Sacks, and this may not be true at all, but you hear it said in the street, I guess, that Rabbi Sacks in Hebrew, he's not as popular with the Israelis as he is, outside of Israel. Is that true?
You are so wrong.
Good.
I am thrilled to say you are so wroung.
I started by saying I may be wrong.
No. Right. I'm delighted to tell you you're wrong. Our friends from Steinsaltz, they have a good Judaica section.
Right. Very good. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to tell you numbers, but we have sold hundreds of thousands of works by Rabbi Sacks in Hebrew. Hundreds of thousands. And our friends at Steinsaltz, they started selling the books, and they sold so many. And they sold so many, and the owner of Steinsaltz came over to Jerusalem. We had lunch together. And he said, "Look, we've never had a rabbi, Israeli or English speaking, that have sold like Rabbi Sacks's works. We have school. What's going on?" And he started reading this. He said he's never read books by rabbis like this ever. There are schools now in Jerusalem being named for him. There are his Sig V'Siach, which is the Hebrew edition of Koren Conversation, is doing brilliantly. He is now being discovered in French. No, he is having, tragically, sadly, he's having a renaissance after his passing. We have Israelis coming onto our stand. What do I have by Rabbi Sacks? What's new from Rabbi Sacks in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem? So I don't think any rabbi, with the possible exception of Rabbi Steinsaltz,
has had this kind
of impact. I mean, don't forget, it was Rabbi Steinsaltz who in the 60s was in the 60s was elucidating what's in the Talmud page. Nobody did that. Nobody did that. I mean, I got to say, I look back, and I feel one of the things we've done, if you look at the generation of 48, it was a heroic generation. I mean, to create a state, the ashes of Auschwitz, it's insane. Yet here we are, and the generation of 48, which came to maturity in the 50s and 60s, and are represented by people like Mr. Koren, like Rabbi Steinsaltz, and in England by Rabbi Sacks. We have taken their works. We have renewed them, not the content, but the form. We have renewed them, we have reinvigorated them, we have remarketed them, and we are bringing them to a new generation.
Amazing. Now, this is a lot less true, what I'm about to describe today, as it once was, because today you have the internet and you have self-publishing and all of that. So it's not as difficult as it once was years or decades ago to bring something to the public. But in many ways, people like yourselves, book publishers, in many ways decide, more or less what people are going to read, what's going to be out there on the shelf. So
I wish.
No, in some ways that has to be true, right? Meaning when I go into the Judaica section at the Stamatsky's near my house, I see what books are, and many of them are your books. So,
well, you're looking at the Judaica section,
right?
And obviously we're very strong there. But if you look at the other sections, we're not that strong.
Right.
I mean, we don't publish,
right? But I would see this as sort of as not some kind of power, but some kind of almost zechut, like you sort of get to decide or help decide what the people are reading. Is this something you think about, or?
No, actually, no. I never thought of that. There are a lot of publishers out there.
Right.
What language we speak in? Hebrew, English, whatever. There's other publishers.
Right.
We don't get every book we want to publish.
Right.
Dare I say there's some good books being published by other publishers?
Right.
Darn. And so no, it's not such a monopoly. And
when you say about other publishers, I'll just interrupt you for a second because I'm sure you've never had an interview where you haven't been asked about ArtScroll. So I'm going to ArtScroll.
Could you spell that?
So are they do you see them as competitors? I mean, in some ways, they publish a Siddur, they publish a Talmud. I mean, I'm 57 years old. I sort of grew up in the ArtScroll, more in the ArtScroll world.
Look, I'm not going to say a bad word about them.
Right.
First, because I wouldn't.
Right.
Secondly, because they do excellent work. And I mentioned I was a Baal Teshuvah. I BT'd in England, and like most BTs, I BT'd with ArtScroll. And at the time, it was more than helpful. I felt it. I want to phrase this correctly. I felt. The more I learned, the more I was unsatisfied. And I felt that...
The more you learned about Judaism.
The more I became...
Not ArtScroll.
No,
right.
sorry. I beg your pardon. No, the more I became religious, and the more I learned, and the more I knew, and the more I didn't feel it was filling my needs, and I didn't know what it was. Made aliyah, and once I started working with Rabbi Sacks and Rabbi Steinsaltz, I kind of clicked what my needs were with these people. So to a large degree, I'll say our Siddur gives me immense pleasure on a daily basis. Gives me immense pleasure. I find it difficult to read some of their publications because there's too much. They're overwhelming. I look at it, for example, our Rashi, I look at our Talmud, it teaches you calmly. It doesn't try to cram in every possible... I think we're doing something very different than ArtScroll.
Right.
I think we're doing something very different. I think it goes back to the clarification and elucidation that's on the page. I think we do that much better. They're pretty good. And they do magnificent work. But it's not what I want to do.
Different strokes for different folks. Yeah. I want to, and I'm really only playing devil's advocate here, talk for a moment about the letters and the fonts and, I don't know what the word in English I'm looking for is.
The typography?
Right. No, just in general, the way everything looks and the way everything feels, what you've
been... The typographic and graphic design.
What you've been discussing. So I mean, for thousands of years, Jews davened from first of all, they didn't daven from anything because there wasn't a printing press, and then they davened from badly constructed books, right? And I was in Poland a few years ago, and you see that, Gur Hasidic dynasty was, led by the Rebbe from this like hovel. We don't often say that we need to have these great cathedral-like buildings. So I always grew up thinking that it was the words, right? The feeling, and not necessarily the packaging, right? So again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Is there sometimes too much focus being put on the externals and not necessarily on the internals? Uh-huh.
No. If you look at, I'll confess this. When all my friends were out, when I was in high school, they were out playing football or baseball or whatever. I was the nerd. And my hobby was printing. I had my own printing press.
So it did start early.
I'm a mega nerd when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, my old Albion press is actually in the Jerusalem Print Center now. So I confess to a very prejudiced point of view. But if I could just borrow the catalog for a second.
Sure.
Especially with Koren design, the purpose of what Mr. Koren achieved was using design and I'll show you what I mean, using design to enhance the meaning.
Right.
It's kind of Marshall McLuhan in the 1950s and 60s, talking about the medium as the message. Right. And it's a little bit like that, but... Right.
So I'm dividing between the externals and the internals, and it's really the same. It's
the way you present something. So, for example, if you look at Baruch Shomar, if you read the introduction for Mr. Koren's Siddur,
right,
which is both English and Hebrew, not French, he says, I hate when the people davening around me are like birds chirping with no meaning. I want to slow them down. I want them to see the word. So if you look here, and you can put this on camera later, look at Baruch Shomar. Do you ever get the poetry? And,
right.
So this is, A, it's slowing you down. B, it's like dividing the lines.
Before you even understand anything intellectually.
You realize something's going on now.
Right. Beautiful.
Yeah, so it's very Bauhaus.
Right.
Remember, he's a product of Germany from the 20s. Tel Aviv has the world's biggest collection of Bauhaus architecture. Right. Form follows function. And this is what he was doing. He was enhancing the layout to enhance, he was designing the layout to enhance prayer.
And how did you decide to put the English on this side and the Hebrew on that side? That's a story also, right?
It is. The first bilingual Hebrew books by Latin were like that. Uh-huh. And then somehow in the last century, it went the other way. But if you look, when you read a book, when you read a magazine, what's the most expensive advertising? It's on the right-hand side. In other words, you read English left to right. Your eye goes this way. You read Hebrew right to left. Your eye goes that way. This is the logical way to doing it, and this is easier on the eye. It takes about 5 minutes to get used to it.
Who discovered that? Who?
We had a very good team of typographers back then, headed up by Raphael Friedman.
Right.
You know Raphael?
Yeah, he lives in Mutien here also, in our neighborhood, yeah.
Most people live in Mutien. And, he came up, it was his determination,
right,
and he sold me on it.
Right. So we only have a few more minutes left. I would like to ask you two last questions. You said before that there are a lot of connections that you make, and I'm sure that you meet a lot of different people in the Jewish, publishing world and authors and all that. What do you think is the next great issue in terms of the Jewish people? Meaning, what are you thinking about in terms of printing, of publishing now? You said you said these projects take seven.
I thought you were talking about the Jewish world in general.
No, you say these projects take 7 to 10 years, whatever. So I'm not asking you to divulge any secrets, but what can we look forward to 5, 10 years from now?
I can tell you right now, we're working very busily with our friends over at Steinsaltz. It was terribly successful in Israel. The Mishnah Torah from Rambam, and we're doing that bilingual now, and the Mishnayot.
Uh-huh.
We're obviously working very hard now in French because that's a catch-up.
Right. So you're going to do the Talmud in French?
No, there's another publisher. No, when he declined Steinsaltz, fine.
Right.
They found another publisher.
Right.
Which,
they found another publisher.
Yeah, fine. I know Jacques very well. He's a good guy. We're all buddies.
Do you see anyone who may be the next, Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, the next Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz in your wanderings?
Obviously, the quick answer to that is no. But there are some incredibly bright, incredibly talented people coming through now. I think a lot of the classic texts have been elucidated, and there would be a bit of Me Tooism if we were just to do. We're not going to do it over for the sake of doing it over. I would say there's going to be more people coming through on the Maggid side of things, Jewish contemporary thought, rather than purely textual based.
Right.
Because, look, the libraries are the libraries are getting full. We are working on a new project, which we're calling the Library of the Jewish People.
And I have 3 volumes of Theodor Herzl. Correct?
That was our first.
Right.
That was our first. We have about a dozen volumes out now.
Oh, really?
And we have another 12 in the pipeline for next year. We're trying to grow that area. Let me give you why we're doing it. You have 2,000 plus years of Jewish writing. Now, I'm a card carrying Frummy, no problem. But I'm not scared of culture. I'm not scared of Zionism. Right. I'm not scared. There's brilliant fiction, there's brilliant political thought, there's brilliant Zionism. So, for example, we did the Herzl volume. Let's just say in the Zionist area, where we're now working on the Jabotinsky, collector writing of Jabotinsky. Let me give you the rabbinics area. And why are we doing it in this setup? And please bear with me. We just came out with the collected writing of Chasdei Kreskas. Now, in the series, if it's rabbinic text, it's bilingual Hebrew, English. If it's poetry from any language, it's bilingual English and whatever language it comes from, German, Hebrew, whatever. Oxford University Press put out an edition of his work in English, and Kreskas was one of the leading anti-Maimonideans of the late 1430s.
I just came back from Provence yesterday.
Okay.
So.
But but a couple of other things about it. Right. He also wrote, he was also the rabbi during the pogroms of 1391. He lost his only son, who was murdered by the pogroms. And he writes letters to the communities of northern Spain and Provence, because it was all sort of the same area then, giving comfort to those people. He writes against Christian persecution. So when Oxford comes out with a book, you think it's a philosophical tract. Very nice. It's English only. When you read the letters, which are only in medieval letters, which went out of print 40 years ago, you know, who is that dude? You know, who's that guy? When you read it, by bringing everything together in a bilingual format, we're giving a fuller picture of the man.
So that's out already?
That's out. Yosef Albo is coming out. Yosef Albo is the same. In other words, so we are very keen on doing the complete works of, Jabotinsky. We have a volume of his fiction and poetry coming out. You know, people think, he's just a, proto-Likud, whatever. No, he was also an artist. He was also a poet. And
this is these are your ideas, or are there other, people?
Once, like everything else, it kind of this is that series here. This is that series here. Yeah.
Like I said, I have the Herzl.
Yisrael. Which one? Yeshua Singer, I.J. Singer, not I.B. Singer. I.J. Singer. His novels are out in English, but nobody ever translated his collected short stories. So we have a 3-volume work. We have a 3-volume edition of the works of Rabbi Herzog out. Nobody have ever translated. Some of his books came out in the 60s, but his major work had never been translated before on Israel as a Jewish state.
Very important.
So there's we're very keen on doing the entire collected works of, because that's a much fuller picture of the writer.
Right.
And we're also doing Esther Singer-Kreitman, the sister that got neglected. We did Amy Levy, a 19th century German.
Wow.
So we have about 800 or 900 books planned out there.
Wow. So let me ask you my last question, and that is, they say that the internet has closed down several different, industries, businesses, whatever it may be. And you would think that people would be not as interested in books today because you could read it on a screen. Shelf space is very, very, coveted and all that. And yet, I mean, I don't know the statistics or the details. It seems to me when I visit Shua Sefer or I go to a bookstore, it seems like there's endless amounts of books coming out. So what is it about the book or about the Jewish book that is so special that it sort of overrides time?
Let me go from the general down to the specific. Forgive me. In general, and this is all public stats, digital books have come down to about, it's averaged out at about 20% in general.
20% of all books, you mean?
Okay. But if you look at it a little more closely, I'm going to get, I'll answer your question. If you look more closely, let's say, remember Harlequin novels?
Yes.
Okay,
a long time ago.
Okay, a Harlequin type of book, where the woman will buy a book a day. That's 99% Kindle. You go to other books, it's much less than 20%. If you look at our books, obviously under Koren, there's nothing that can go.
Right, you're not going to daven from a Kindle,
you're not going to daven from a Kindle. And if you look at Magid, a certain percentage, but I think there's an element of, I think it's a cultural thing. There's a Jewish element of having your books that you love and define your religion and define your belief on the shelf access.
Right.
You can get, yes, you can look up anything on the internet, and I think Safari is wonderful, but you have to know what to look for. If it's not a book, you can search it quickly.
Right.
So I think from a cultural point of view, from a user point of view, from a friendly point of view, we're not going anywhere from a printed book point of view.
Great. Very last question. If I have to pick one book to read tonight, start reading tonight, Matthew Miller's recommendation, what would it be? One book.
Don't do that to me. I love all my children. Of which I will say I'm going from here down to Otef Aza because one of my sons is in Aza, so I'm coming out to look at him, and his mother wants to see him, and so we're meeting tonight. So,
well, you should be safe.
Yeah. So we're
okay. Well, thank you so much.
I'm not going to answer your question.
Okay.
That's my answer.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to say before we end?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. It's really a pleasure having you come in today. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on Defining Moments. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts, and leave a 5-star rating and a review. Please share this podcast with your friends who, like you, want to be inspired both by this period in Jewish and Israeli history and by the people who are making these defining moments happen. Let's not squander this unique opportunity. Maybe the next defining moment will be created by you or me. Until next time, I'm Rabbi David Fine.